He told me, hey, I got something fantastic to tell you. He said, I am affiliated with people that speak with the spirits of the dead. How would you like to talk to the spirit of your dead mother? And I was shocked. I was shocked. He said, you wouldn't be afraid of talking to the spirit of your dead mother, would you? Well, I said, I'll tell you what, I would have to give that some thought, because it's something I never thought about before in my life.
Heart Research Center presents A Trip into the Supernatural with best-selling author Roger Morneau. While still a young man in the city of Montreal, Roger Morneau became involved in the worship of demons. In this two-part series, Roger gives us a first-hand account of his harrowing brush with the powers of darkness and ultimately his divine rescue. Also joining him are Cyril and Cynthia Grossi, the very couple who first pointed Roger from the darkness to the light. Conducting this exclusive interview are Dan and Karen Houghton of Heart Research Center. Let's now join the Houghtons and Roger Morneau as we together enter part one of A Trip into the Supernatural.
How in the world did you ever get involved in praying to demon spirits?
Well, when I came out of the Navy after World War II, I was looking for take up a trade in Montreal, Canada. And at that time, I ran across a fellow that had been on a particular ship with me. And he said, hey, Morneau, you're alive. How nice to meet you. He says, let's have a dinner tonight. I said to my boss, can I have the evening off? Because I was the assistant to the Windsor bowling alleys and billiard, you know. It's the high-class place in Montreal where all the dress manufacturing people go and relax. So I got the evening off and I went out, we went out and had dinner. He told me, hey, I got something fantastic to tell you. He said, I am affiliated with people that speak with the spirits of the dead. How would you like to talk to the spirit of your dead mother? And I was shocked. I was shocked. He said, you wouldn't be afraid of talking to the spirit of your dead mother, would you? Well, I said, I'll tell you what, I would have to give that some thought, because it's something I never thought about before in my life.
Most of us probably haven't. A little afraid of something like that.
Well, he says, you know, it's written all over your face. You're afraid of going to a seance. But he says, I know you. He says, you're going to come. And then he started to tell me how brave I was when I was aboard ship, you know, different things. He says, you're not the same man. You're changed. You're chicken. That's all I needed to hear. I said, when do we go to a seance? So one Saturday evening, we were in the place. It was the very first time. Very beautiful place. The medium was a lady. She had a gorgeous new home in Montreal. And there were about 20 invited guests there, which I was one of them. And she communicated with the spirits for different people there and telling them what the spirit said. And then there was one lady that had been talking almost continually before the seance started, and she didn't believe in the dead appearing and all of this and all that. And she said, well, I would have to see my dead sister, she says, to believe it. So while this the seance was going, one man said, I would like to talk to my friend that died 6 months ago, but I don't want him to appear. Just want to talk to him. Because he says, I don't trust you talking to my friend for me. So the medium says, let me inquire of the spirit. Yeah, the spirit will talk with you. And that big masculine voice was heard in the place. He says, hi, Frank. It's nice of you to ask for me to talk with you. And they had a little chat. And after it was over, Frank says, this is the greatest thing on earth. to be able to talk with the spirits of the dead. Then the medium said, we have a very special surprise tonight for you people. A spirit will manifest itself openly here in a few minutes, and it's like a big gust of wind hit the building and right through the wall. Now the lights weren't terribly bright, but they were like living room lights, a couple of floor lamps, and maybe some of these, and that translucent being seemed to come right out of the wall.
How did you feel right at that moment?
It's almost like my heart stopped a little bit. Very weird feeling. So it was a lady in a beautiful evening gown, floor-length, and she said to Mary, my dear sister, you are so wonderful to have asked for me. And Mary fainted and fell right off her chair on the floor. And a couple of guys jumped up and picked her up, and spirit gone. And that was the beginning of it.
That's how you got into it.
Yeah, that's the way I got into it. After a while, you see, there's something interesting about the human mind. You can adjust an awful lot of stuff. You can adjust to a lot of things that would terrify you to begin with. After a while, they become common and ordinary.
So you mean contact with the supernatural can become commonplace and ordinary and doesn't bother anybody?
Yeah.
In other words, the more that you do it, you're not uncomfortable.
That's right.
It's just not an uneasy feeling.
Yeah.
So how did you feel about it?
Then I
after
got
that?
into a secret society that worshipped the spirits, you see.
Well, how is that different from the seance, Roger?
It happens that the seance are not involving in many ways. But when you get into a secret society of spirit worshippers, then, and especially when you're invited there by the direction of the higher-ups in the spirit world, you never get out of there alive. And this is exactly what my friend and I were up against. We didn't know anything about it. And there was a very, very popular big band leader.
Jazz musician?
Band, yeah. Very famous. He played a lot in Montreal, Canada, Vancouver, the big cities. And one night we went to one of these seances, and he was with his wife. Now the spirits had told him what to do. Spirit told him, there's two of these guys, give the names, and your wife will want to talk, we'll make it so that your wife will want to talk to the medium when you say that you want to go home because you're tired. As soon as you see that these guys are starting to want to leave, then leave with them at the same time. And as you get outdoors, you ask them if they're driving. They'll say, no, they're going to take the tramway a couple blocks away. Well, you invite them to get in your car with you, and that you will take them to a fancy restaurant and treat them to some good food and talk about the merchant navy. And that's what the guy did. And there we were in this, going to this plush restaurant, pulled into a little alley, and I can still see it like it was yesterday. Just enough room to pass the car, back alley, that happened to give on a restaurant that was on St. Catharines Street, which is the main street of Montreal. And that was quite an evening.
So Roger, you're at this restaurant. What happened?
Well, after we were seated, in entering there, the place was just full, packed tight. But there was a couple of tables against a wall that had a reservation sign on it. And the owner of the place recognized the band leader and came and said, good evening, and you gentlemen want a table. So you're one of the reserved people. So we sat there, and we had our favorite alcoholic beverages, and as we talked, the band leader says, how long have you fellas been involved with sorcery? And he shocked us a little bit, and I said, exactly what do you mean? Well, he said, what you people are doing, talking to the supposed spirits of the dead. He says, this is silly.
And this man had been at the seance with you.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And he's telling you that it's silly what you've just done.
Because see, my wife, he says, goes to these seances because she gets comfort and she gets something good out of it, good feeling out of it. And she lives for what the spirits, are going to see that the future is going to be like. To me, he says, I can't bother with this stuff. He says, I want power. I go right to the source of power. And he says, how do you think that I became famous the way that I am? Well, I said, you must have had some good luck. Well, he says, there's no such thing as good luck. He says, there's either some power working for you somewhere, or you don't get ahead in this world. Not in my type of occupation. So it went from there that we got talking about spirit worship.
Did it intrigue you? Or did it make you want to find out more about what exactly he was talking about?
Yeah. So he said the supposed spirits of the dead that you're talking with are demon spirits. They're fallen angels. They're beautiful beings.
Just set it out, just like
that. Oh,
yeah.
It didn't make you uneasy when he said they were
Well, it shocked you a little bit, something that you first hear mentioned to you. He said, you guys have got a great future ahead of you. Because we've been told, the high priest of our society, secret society, has been told that the master has very special plans for you too.
Now, what did he mean by the master?
Satan. And we were interested to hear more about it. And he told us, he says, look, we worship spirits. We worship Lucifer and all his angels. They're just as beautiful as they did before they were cast out of heaven. He says there was a misunderstanding in the whole thing. He says among the inhabitants of the galaxies. And he says our master was misunderstood. And God did not bear with him like he does with people that make mistakes today. So we're in a warfare, good against evil. And we happen to be the evil ones, but we're not that bad. He says, I look at this business between the forces of good and evil. He says, you believe in one person believes in God, and everyone believes in Lucifer. It's like politics.
So the great controversy is real. And you've heard someone talk about it that's on the other side.
And to these people, they are sold to the fact that Christ will not return to this planet with power and great glory. He's going to abdicate all claims to the planet, because the high priest once said that Christ will abdicate all claim to the planet because he knows that it is lawfully and rightfully Satan's. And at that time he says, Lucifer, you mentioned Lucifer a lot of times, but he mentioned Satan also. He says, the master, usually they like to talk about the master will resurrect his people from the graves.
Now George is telling you all this, or the high priest?
George.
Okay, when the evening wound down, and you're putting a cap on all that, you guys had consumed some alcohol.
Yeah.
And did you feel like that there was kind of a one-shot deal? You didn't know if it ever happened again? What happened after that?
He said, no, I said, listen, guys. He said, I like to have you, says, meet some of our people. What about next week, Wednesday evening? I'll pick you up at your place, and you're invited to one of our services.
Services? Like a church service?
Yeah, something similar to that. It's a testimonial to the spirits, about how the spirits have blessed your life. See? So, when we left there, I said to myself, this guy is half drunk. I'm not going to hear from him again, But it was true. Wednesday night came, he was there with his big Lincoln, step in, and we went to one of the most beautiful area of Montreal. And the place was a mansion. Now, a mansion is usually very large. We'll call this a small mansion. It was beautiful. Most beautiful place. Yeah.
Roger, your friend George took you and Roland to this mansion where people worshipped the demons. What was it like there? What kind of people were there?
Well, it was a big surprise for me, as I kind of made up in my mind an idea that they were going to be rough-looking characters. But as we entered the place, I was amazed to see that they were all very well dressed, well mannered, and that a lot of the people, as we were being introduced to people, were professionals, doctors, attorneys, a lot of business people. And see what they had a praise session to the gods, which is the spirit counselors, which are in charge of legions of spirits, of demon spirits. And they talk about what the Lord of their lives has done for them, because they call on particular spirits, like the god Nehushtan, which you read in 2 King about. The Israelites worshipped the golden serpent that Moses had made. Well, behind the spirit worship, behind that, they were worshipping the serpent. They were actually worshipping this spirit Nehushtan. And the same spirit Nehushtan is, the priest was telling us, that the medical doctor that was telling us how he was making operations that had never been made before, because people had to be awake, yet have no feeling. He was able to, carry on surgeries that had not been done before. But the spirits would give that capacity to be able to operate without people feeling any pain and things. And also without no problem with the blood, because as he would cut his incision, because incisions, everything open and with no blood running. So he could do the work that has not been done before. So.
Now, I recall reading in your book that at this praise worship service they had, they would sing hymns. Why would they sing hymns in a demon worship?
Yeah, this was kind of a big surprise to me when that took place. The priest said, "Hey, let's go down to the worship room of the gods and have a praise session, a singing session." So we go down there, and what did you think they pass around? Church hymnals, Christian church hymnals. And I couldn't believe this. I said, "What's his business?" So the priest says, "Well, now," he says, "for those of you that are new, let me tell you that this is the most feasible way," he says, "to please the spirits. It's to deride Christ and his people, and his church and all that." So they sing out of Christian hymnals.
They didn't sing Christian words to the hymns, however.
Well, they changed a lot of them. Yeah,
and not for the good.
It's a form of blasphemy. Yeah. Such as you see today in the rock music world. You see the entertainers, they have these crosses. Ladies got earrings, crosses. The guys got the cross. This is a form of blasphemy, a form of deriding Christ. You see, spirits cause the people to do that, to find pleasure in wearing this type of emblem, which is the cross is the emblem of the crucifixion of Christ to the Christians.
So what were your impressions the first time you went down into that worship room?
Well, it was, we'd been there maybe a half a dozen times, and the high priest told us after the meeting was over, he wanted to talk to us, my friend and I. So after most people had left, he says, "The master of my life has revealed to me that it is time for you people to become acquainted with the worship room of the gods." Well, we started to move toward a beautiful grand staircase. Beautiful. The banister was huge. It was massive, and the wrought iron work that they had done in it was super. The beautiful decorations on the walls, the chandelier on the first landing. See, that was the first landing. You go down about 8 or 10 steps, and then you had the first landing. It was huge and beautiful. The light arrangement was the nicest I had ever seen in my life. When we got into this sanctuary area, it wasn't very brightly lit, but everything was magnified the beauty of certain things. Like a lot of the things were gold plated, or gold trims. You see, the little altars where they had the spirits that had materialized. They photographed them, and then they had paintings made of them. And there was probably about maybe 100 of those around the place.
Sort of like a shrine.
Yeah, and underneath there was a little altar where you have incense and things that they would use in their prayer sessions and things like that, devotions to certain spirits. And some of the objects in there, the priest said, were solid gold. It was a unique experience to see that.
So how did you feel when you walked into that room?
I felt that these people had power, and they had a lot of it.
Did that attract you?
Yes and no.
You had mixed feelings about it?
I had mixed feelings about it, yeah. Because to a certain extent, things looked so good and sounded so good to us. But you see, I'd been brought up in a Christian home where my parents had told us we were 8 children in the family. And especially the older ones, you know. My dad says, well, you know, if you get involved in wrongdoing, you're going to have to pay the price. There's always a cost for everything in this world. So this thought kept creeping into my mind. Just how far you go with these spirits before we start paying the price. See? Yeah.
So it made you just a little bit nervous.
Oh, yes.
But yet you kept going back.
Oh, there was no way out. Because that we were told.
You knew at that time.
Yeah.
So you were moving forward more on fear.
More on fear, yes. Because the high priest said that the master had special plans for us in our lives. And that no one ever went into this society unless they were invited by the spirits. See, so that was made very clear. And he also expressed to us the danger, explained to us the danger of going against the will of the spirits. And he mentioned about this one man and his wife that live in a fireproof building in Montreal. The place burned right down within a minute. He was one of their members that had decided that, well, he wanted to think things over. He was not going to get initiated at a time that the spirit said he would like him to be initiated into the society.
So in reality, Roger, you were chosen by high-powered demon spirits to be a part of their human, special, privileged group.
You see, these people in Montreal, the society, like the priest mentioned, there's thousands of spirit worshippers, you know, in different societies of spirit worshippers in this world. But he says, we are the elite. We know the real truth about the master and his angels. And they're not hideous-looking beings. They are gorgeous creatures. And from the paintings that they had on the wall of the walls of that worship room, they were unique beings. Especially there was a painting full length painting of the fallen Lucifer above his altar, and that was very fascinating because he looked like a man of great intellect, high forehead, the way that he looked with his eyes, the way he had the eyes looking. It gave you a depth of perception of somebody that is very, very knowledgeable and
powerful.
Powerful, yeah.
So Roger, this high priest that you talked about, he is the one that ushered you down into the worship room. Was he also the one that led out in the praise sessions that you talked about?
Yes, and he had an assistant also, another priest.
Okay. Now, when you would go to these praise sessions, what kinds of things happened at those sessions?
Well, there's a lot of success stories.
Positive mental attitude kinds of things?
Well, yes, a lot of success stories. The masters has done this for me and that for me. I remember one lumber dealer, he had like half a dozen different operations in the province of Quebec. And everything that he touched seemed to turn to money. You know? And he was telling about it. And then there's this other person that was a clairvoyant that would work only for the wealthy people, only for the super wealthy. He says, I have the know-how, They have the means, let them pay. So he advised in business transactions. They would come to him and say, listen, I look at this deal that I might get, this factory or whatever it is, like, because this person was interested in industrial real estate, see? And he would talk to the spirit, and then the spirit was audible to him. See, you could hear the spirit talk to him, but the man did not hear. So the spirit was telling the clairvoyant what he called himself an astrologer, reading the moons and the stars, and
Now, what was the term you used for his title, this man?
Clairvoyant.
Clairvoyant.
Oh, clairvoyant.
Clairvoyant. Okay. Yes, and it was interesting. This person stood up and says, I had a nice little experience last week. And he says, the masters, he says, they take care of you. This lady and her husband brought him, to this astrologer, a bundle of money. They said, this is the deal that you... And he works at only on percentages. Only on percentages. He doesn't work for set amounts of money. Only percentages of what the people are going to make. So he said, they brought me a substantial amount of money. And they were very happy with it, and I thought it was very reasonable. But then my guide, spirit, says, ask them when they're going to give you the other $1,700 that is really yours. And he says to the folks, I would like to know now, before we leave here, when will you have the $1,700 to give me? That makes up my part of, rightful part of the deal. The wife fainted, and the husband says, we'll have the money for you within 24 hours. So that was this type of praise session.
So he was thanking the demons for helping him to know that.
Oh yeah, even spirits, yeah.
At what point did this demon worship start to affect you personally, Roger?
Well, it wasn't too long that the priest mentioned to us that the time had arrived for us to start trusting the spirits and give the spirits a chance to work for us. And there was a number of gifts that you could choose from, you see. And I used to play the horses, some. Not knowledgeable at all. I used to go to those bookies, play the horse every so often. But I said, hey, I would like to be able to, for the spirit to instruct me on the numbers and the name of the horses that's going to win, at Belmont or some other racetracks like that. Make myself a little money. So the priest says, it'll be given you. And sure enough, one night whether I fell into a trance or dreamed the thing, I don't know exactly what happened, but I saw 3 races that were really going to pay big. And these horses were dummies, so to speak. You know what I mean? They were not really good horses. They were like one horse paid 21 to 1 because he was that poor, right? The chance of winning was so poor that they paid 21 to 1 on him. And it showed me I saw the board at the bouquet and the number on it. And I went there, and they said it was going to be on Saturday. That was like on Wednesday. A few days later, it was Saturday. I went there, and sure enough, there they were on the boards. I went to the wicket and handed some money and got myself a winner. Now I said, well, I'm a little crazy. I ought to put more money on there, so I put $20 onto the next horse, and that paid 21 to 1. So I left there with maybe $400 or $500 in my hands, and I started to do that. In this case, I went directly down to the finest men's shop on St. Catherine Street and bought myself a $200 suit.
And in 1946, a $200 suit was...
In 1946, people used to work at the RCA Victor, where I had worked before I went to the Navy, for $18 a week. And the good earners were $75 to $50 to $75 per week, for labor.
So the demon spirits looked on you so favorably, they began to help you win in your gambling.
Then I went to other bookies, you see. And one day, I am told of the man at the cage where you do your bet. He says, my boss would like to talk to you. And he said, you go right through that door over there. Oh, sure. So I know the guy says, come on in. The guy's sitting behind a big desk, smoking the big cigar. So he says, you're Roger. I says, yeah. He got up and walked around me. He said, you don't look that smart. I said, what, sir? You don't look that smart. He said that you could pick horses that are winners when they're supposed to be losers. Where do you get your help? What do you mean help? I'm not getting any help. I just happen to go and... Oh, no. We've been watching you here, he says, for a number of weeks. And you always leave here with some of our good money. And I'll tell you, buddy, if you want a list of all the bookies in Montreal, I'll give you a list of them. But he says, I want you out of here. And don't show up again. Because somebody's going to put a... You know what I mean? I said, okay, sir, I won't be back again. So it's a tough business to be in gambling.
So even with the spirit's help, it was tough.
Yeah. Well, it's stuff is going to shoot you, yes.
Yeah. The high priest would say a number of things to you when you were in these praise services, and you went to a number of them over a period of time. Mm-hmm. Talked about the issues of the great conflict. You've already touched on that a little bit. I want you to follow up on that a little bit more, Roger. Some of the things that you wrote in your book, Trip into the Supernatural, sounds a whole lot like what we as Christians today know as the Great Controversy. Mm-hmm. What were some of the things that he told you there? Well, he says that there's a great controversy going on between the force of good and evil, between Christ and Satan. And they always praise the great master, Satan, as a super intelligent being that he is, beautiful to behold, and if he ever appears to you, you won't be able to look upon him because it'll be too bright. It'll just ruin your vision. The high priest said he was in Chicago, and the Spirit appeared to him and said, Morneau and his buddy, George, has invited them to the service, and the fellow that is in charge while you're away says that he's going to wreck all the work that the spirits have done for the last few years to get these people into the society. So the high priest, which is in Chicago, picks up the phone and calls, and the spirit appeared to him, and he said the angel was so bright that he could not look upon him. And he says after he picked up the phone to dial, he couldn't dial the phone because of the fact that his vision was so terribly blurred by the light, the beautiful light of the bright being. And he asked, dial 0, and the operator came on, and she had to, dial for him. And they talk about many, many things in regards to, who's going to win this conflict. Any discussion about fire and brimstone?
Yes. He says, the Bible people, talking about the Christians, they read in the Bible that, we're all going to land in a lake of fire and this and that. So that's baloney. He says the conflict is going to end peacefully. Christ is going to realize that you might as well abdicate the rights of this planet, take his few people along with him to his planet in the center of the galaxies, and we will be left with a master who will resurrect all his people that will be as numerous as the sand of the sea. See? And the master will rule forever and ever and ever. A happy people. And he named some of the people that's going to be there. I don't want to mention the names because they're known to history. Yeah. So that was quite impressive.
Did you always feel, Roger, that these people were telling the truth?
Oh yes, yeah. That they really had things down straight. But I was not satisfied with the answers. And there was something, and I understand now it was the Spirit of God saying, hold back, fellow, hold back. And The priest had talked about us thinking seriously about being initiated into their cult.
Right. So they let you come to sort of take a look-see, but you can't go back for several months.
Oh yeah, it's not a matter of whether you're going to be initiated or not.
It's when.
Okay. You see?
So they begin to press you for a commitment.
So the priest said, look, fellas, I'm not going to pressure you into anything, okay? But I want to show you what the spirits can do for a devoted servant. We went downstairs, not through the staircase that I talked for the worship room of the gods, but at the other end of the building, went downstairs. And a number of times I'd gone there to the men's room and I heard these typewriters clicking like the dickens. Man, it's going. I said, why do we have a lot of people typing in there, in that room? Well, we went there that evening and he knocked and the man says, come on in. And there was all those typewriters moving along by themselves, typing at the speed that I'd never seen before. And not only that, the high priest says, I want to show you something clever. So he says, follow me. So we went around the table. There was like 2 long tables, and they had about 10 typewriters. And he says, now notice that the typewriter types to the right, then doesn't go back. It types back to the left. Isn't that something? I had never heard of things like that before. He said, the spirits are doing the work. And he introduced us to the man. And the man is a lawyer. And he said, how much money did you make last year? Oh, he says, it's in the 6 figures. You see?
So this lawyer had a business in the building that housed the worship room.
Oh, yeah.
And he had a whole room full of typewriters.
Yeah.
And he put paper in there, and demons
That's
typed.
all he did. Put typewriter paper in there. It was
And what came out? What was it that came out?
different briefs for court cases.
And so he would sell these to people?
Oh yeah,
Okay.
he had this service to the legal profession,
And the high priest was
the United
showing...
States and Canada.
So the high priest was showing you this to give you an idea about the kinds of blessings that you would
That's
receive?
right. Yeah.
But after you left that typewriter, the room where the lawyer was, they tried to draw you into a commitment by getting you to make a public profession. Tell us about that.
Well, they have a super beautiful resort in the Laurentian Mountains, which is north of Montreal, north of Saint Agathe. Saint Agathe is a famous name there in Montreal. Montrealers, because they all go Saint Agathe or north there, you know, to summer home and that. So they had a big resort up there. It was people, you know, it was a closed society. And they had on October the 30th, Halloween, is that?
October 31.
31, last day of October. They had what they call live animal sacrifices. I don't know what it is, but they did. We could never find out. By the time that the Lord pulled me out of there, I had not yet found out what it was. So you have this intrigue involved in there. And he talked about three very unique services that I attended there that sit on my mind forever. One was entitled Christian Idolatry. Another one was entitled The Super Deception of a Glorious New Age, which actually applies to the New Age today. And this was 1946 that we're talking. And then the other one was Satan's Great General Council of the 1700s. And I must say the things that I heard there was an eye-opener. First of all, we'll go through the Great General Council.
Okay.
At the beginning of the 1700s, said the high priest, Satan and all his spirit counselors held a Great General Council with one purpose in mind. It was to prepare for the great industrial age that was soon to break upon the world. And Lucifer also foresaw another age that was to follow that, where tremendous scientific discoveries would be made by people, and we would enter a unique age that would change the way that everybody lives. It would also serve to usher in the end times and the close of the great controversy between the forces of good and evil. And the priest said that Lucifer had been studying the Bible. And he found in Daniel 12:4, where we are told about the time of the end, many shall run to and fro, knowledge shall be increased. He understood it to be that we're getting to that point. And he had, with all the spirit counselors, to change their modes of operation in order, to ensnare people. And they devised a way whereby people would disqualify themselves from being members of Christ's kingdom.
And he was just very candid about this.
Oh, yeah.
Telling you and the rest of the group, 60 or 70 people there, the plans that
Close to 100 people.
Lucifer had revealed to him.
And by the time the council came to a close, they had three major policies that were going to be followed. First, they were to see to it that humans would be made to believe that Satan and his angels do not really exist. Because up to that time, you could walk down a street of Paris and you would have signs that would say where you have a soothsayer or a fortune teller of some type, and if you want to put a curse on someone, you could go and see this other old lady over there, the old witch. That's the way it goes. But now it had to change. Lucifer says we have to make sure that people, humans, get to believe that Satan and his angels do not really exist.
You know, Roger, that's interesting because a recent research study report that I read indicated that in a national survey, I believe it's over 75% of people do not really believe in a real tangible devil. But there is one.
Oh, yeah. Now, the next thing, the three parts policy that they had adopted there, the second one was to find a way of being able to get total control of people's minds. And that would be done by taking hypnotism out of the realm of the occult and introduce it as a new science for the benefit of mankind.
So part of what the high priest told you was Satan's strategy to take total control of people's minds.
They felt that by taking hypnotism out of the realm of the occult and introducing it as a new science for the benefit of mankind, they could then use people of great renown, educators, people of capacity, that would do great things, such as supposedly regress people in time to former lives that they had. And of course, after the session is over, the person would not know a thing about ancient history. And the person that she or he has talked about performing, certain deeds, we'll say 3,000 or 4,000 years ago. But this was their strategy. Now, what this would do for the thing is this, that it would create in the minds of the general public, solidly set in the mind of the general public, an unwavering trust in that great deception. In other words, people could, they would believe it. This person was hypnotized, was regressing time to, former lives, and did this and did that, and no deception. Maybe Alexander the Great, we'll say, and some of his generals and people like that. And the person, after the session is over, comes out of hypnotism, and he or she doesn't know what she's talking about. So now this would be a way of de-Christianizing the Western world through the avenue of mysticism. Now the time came when Lucifer decided that he had to choose a person to initiate this thing. And Franz Mesmer, which was an Austrian physician, was chosen. Because
the priest told you all of this?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Because he was most capable. Mesmer originated a theory called animal magnetism, later on named mesmerism. Mesmer was led by the spirits to believe, and this is what the priest said, was led by the spirits to believe that certain persons have a magnetic influence within themselves, so to speak, that would cause them to have great power over other persons, even to the point of placing them into a trance. And at that time, that was readily accepted by people in general, at the time that Mesmer lived. So people realized, you know, they said that some people got a capacity to put you into a trance. That's the way. Now, by the time that he died, in 1815, a lot of the physicians in Europe were using hypnotism as a means of anesthesia.
Now, hypnotism is the same as mesmerism?
That's right.
Okay.
So mesmerism that's been developed to a higher degree of refinement. And the priest went on saying that the plan of Satan to deceive the human family this way, he says, is the most intriguing thing to his mind. And he went on saying how it was going to be brought about. He said that a fellow by the name of Darwin and another fellow by the name of Thomas Henry Huxley would be used by the spirits because in their childhood they had been hypnotized by medical doctors. And they figured that they would be real good subjects to lead the people into this belief that they had, that Satan wanted to bring into people's lives.
Now, what were those 3 points again, Roger? The 3 things were, number 1, that they did not want Satan did not want the human family to think that he or his angels existed.
Right.
The second point that you made had to do with taking control of people's minds.
That's right.
The third point was what?
Was to destroy the Bible without burning it.
Okay.
See?
And what was his strategy on that?
On that, it was very interesting. Because after the Great General Council, it was decided that Satan would tutor Charles Darwin personally in setting up the principles of his theories of evolution. He was tutored by Lucifer himself, fallen Lucifer. And at that time, it was understood, Satan and his spirit counselors understood, that if a person was led to believe in the theory of evolution, it would, in his life, destroy completely the creation week of the Bible, the fall of man, and the plan of redemption. It would do away with it.
In one fell swoop.
Yeah. Now, he made a unique statement. He said that according to the spirits, anyone that teaches a theory of evolution is considered to be a minister of a great religious system. See, they call it the religious system, the theory of evolution, because it is a system of schooling people and getting them to disqualify themselves from being members of Christ's kingdom. And he said that every teacher of that theory is recognized by the spirits as a person of great value and receives a very special unction from Satan himself, giving great power to induce spiritual blindness, to convince and convert. 3 capacities are given to those teachers of the theory. Then, that's not all. The priest says that Satan considers the teachers of the theory of evolution to be so valuable to him that in the sight of all the inhabitants of the galaxies, he assigns a retinue of bright, beautiful angels to follow that educator all the remainder of his life. And that in the sight of the inhabitants of the galaxies is the greatest honor that he can bestow upon his workers, to all mankind, and to, until the controversy is finished. That was quite enlightening.
Now, the high priest was talking just sort of like a preacher would talk up front. Was he enthusiastic? Did he seem like he had bought into this and was excited about it?
Oh yeah, he believed it 100%, no question about it, so everything.
Why would he be so excited about spirits trying to deceive human beings? Because obviously out of this council of the 1700s, deception was a major part of the strategy. Why?
Well, he says it's deception it's like politics. You know, you believe in one candidate, the other person believes in the other candidate, and they're fighting to get the position, and it's just a matter of who's going to be the smartest. And with Lucifer, the fallen cherubim, he's very smart. He's going to win, and Christ's going to abdicate the rights of the planet. He's going to resurrect his people, have established his kingdom that lasts for ever and ever. God won't be able to destroy him because it would be against God's, the Creator's nature to destroy Lucifer in the fire. Beside that, he said, spirits now, even spirits, have the capacity now to outlive fire. He says, you don't believe it, go to India or some of those countries where they have fire walkers. And it's done by the power of demon spirits. These people are energized by demon spirits, so they can walk on those hot coals without burning themselves.
And this is what the high priest said.
And he says, if you want to use fire, they can use it. It's not going to burn anybody. So that's the way they believe.
So this high priest was almost talking to your group in an evangelistic fervor.
Oh yeah, because he figures that he's going to be one of the higher ups in the great kingdom.
Okay. Now, of the group that was there that night, 60, 70 people, I think you've mentioned before.
Yeah, it varied.
How many of those were people who were hardcore members, and how many of them were new inductees?
Well, we were the only two youngsters there, so to speak.
You and your friend. And how old were you at that time, Roger?
I was about 20.
20 years old.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 20 years old.
Did you have a feeling of awe over the fact that you had been chosen?
Yes, in a way. And then I got thinking about this. When am I going to have to pay the price? The cost. My parents had brought me up like this. If you get involved with evil, you're going to reap what you sowed. So you want to be upright in life. And if you associate with evildoers, they'll probably land you in jail or somewhere else that you wouldn't want to be. So there's always a price to be paid.
So you had that little something maybe instilled by your mother and father a long time ago that kept you from making that full commitment. Friendly spirits, just to digress for just a moment. You mentioned 3 different categories, and the friendly spirits are the ones that love to impersonate being a historian or something.
We specialize in that.
In your experiences in the praise services or in the worship room or the other places where you were, any of the places you were, did you ever witness an event where necromancy or even something that would be popularly called channeling today took place, where you actually heard the voice of someone in response to someone's questions?
Yeah, a number of times, but there was one time in particular that fascinated me because it was unique in one way. The priest told us that there was a French historian that was affiliated with Montreal, University of Montreal, which is a French university, and the English university is McGill. So the University of Montreal is the French university. And this man was from Paris, but he's affiliated with the university, and he wanted to have some details in regards to Napoleon Bonaparte and one of his generals. So, by the way, there are also in other parts of the world elite spirit worshippers like the group that we had in Montreal. And he mentioned there that he said, you guys are fortunate when my friend and I went in, because you're right in time to see something very interesting. My friend there is having his devotions in the worship room of the gods, and he will use a trance medium to converse with certain demon spirits that will inform him in regards to ancient history about Napoleon. And sure enough, we went down there, and somebody came up and said he's ready for the session, and we went down there, and he said he would need 3 people. You would need 3 people, but he wanted 5 people that volunteer to be the channel for the spirit. Okay, so three of them were chosen there, and the others went back and sat down. And the man shook his head a little bit like this. His eyes went glazed, and he stayed at it for a half hour. And the spirit spoke to him. He said, I'm a spirit counselor. And what would you like to know? He had a clipboard, the historian, in asking some questions.
This historian was from Paris.
Yeah.
And he was wanting information.
Some detailed information
about Napoleon
Bonaparte and one of his generals.
And so he asked the questions of one of these human beings that was channeling.
Oh yeah, the voice changed and everything. The voice changed of the person completely.
Okay. And it identified itself as a spirit guide.
Oh yeah, spirit counselor, yeah.
Okay, a spirit counselor. And then proceeded to tell him all the events that he was asking,
yes.
answer his questions?
And there was a certain question that was asked, and the spirit counselor said, I will have Lord Remy and Lord Alphonse duplicate, in other words, the dialogue that had taken place.
Oh,
and the two other
drama.
Yeah,
a little
and the two other men fulfilled what he was looking for. But the one thing that interests me is the mayor of Montreal, Camillien Hood. During World War II, at the beginning of the war, he was very controversial when it regards to the war effort. He would tell the French-speaking boys not to go into the armed service, see, because you're going to go and shed your blood for the British, you know, and we're their servants, so to speak, and all that, and he didn't want them to go into war, and they put him in prison. He was jailed for the length of the war for this. Now, the man said, I would like to have you tell me, to the spirit, to give me part of the speech that was given by Camillien Hood on the steps of the Montreal City Hall on a certain date. There are different versions of what has taken place, and you, Lord, would know the exact one.
Now, the mayor of Montreal was still alive.
Was still alive.
And this historian is asking what was actually said at a speech.
Yeah.
Okay.
The spirit counselor said, I'm sorry, I can't help you. All of my activities and my people have taken place in Europe. However, after my departure, our departure, other spirits will come and help you. And sure enough, the guy vibrated a little bit, and he's back, and he said, boy, how long? He said, 20 minutes, been used as a channel. So they, again, the spirit entered into him, and the spirit said that he was a spirit counselor that could give him the information that he was looking for. So, again, it was given verbally, and it was the voice of Camillien Hood.
Now, how did you know that it was the voice?
Well, because of the fact, you see, I was a youngster in those days, just about ready to go into the army. And Camillien, we used to listen to the radio. We had no television in those days, so it was only radio, and read the newspaper. And all the speeches of Camillien made, and all of it was on the radio all the time. And in those days, they had no tape recorders, such as we have now. So Camillien would have to go to the Canadian Broadcasting Studio, where they made a record, a real phonograph record. And then they played it over and over, for the rest of the day.
So you listened to those as a teenager before you went into the army, so you knew his voice.
So I knew his voice really good. So I said to George, he was sitting next to me, he said, isn't it amazing? He said, if you think that's amazing, wait, he says, until the spirits impersonate one of the departed people that you know personally, like an uncle or a brother or a sister or something like that. He says, that is unique. But that's the way it was. You are able to reproduce a voice, man, and the just to perfection. The spirits are exceedingly proud of this. Because, and this also was right up my alley, the priest said that as the times on this planet gets more and more difficult, and calamities of all kinds are striking the planet more and more frequently, demon spirits are going to impress people with the importance of Sunday sacredness.
Roger, when I was a teenager back in the 1970s, I remember a song that came out talking about the age of Aquarius. And since then, we've seen the development of the New Age. And I wondered if, back when you were involved in spirit worship, if they talked about New Age at all.
Oh yes, it was a big thing that was coming up. One of the major deceptions of the last days. And the priest told us, we talked quite a while, and then he said, could I have a little bit more of your time? I want to do something very fascinating. He says, the grand plan, the master's grand plan for harvesting the nations, for harvesting the multitudes of the earth into his cause, just before the close of the great controversy between the forces of good and evil. So he continued, after we expressed ourselves that we're deeply interested to know more about the activities of spirits. And he said it's going to be done in a unique manner. This grand plan is going to take people are going to eat the stuff. Because he says spirits, demon spirits, will declare themselves to be inhabitants of far distant planets in the galaxies that are coming to warn the inhabitants of planet Earth of the impending destruction of the planet unless something seriously proper is done to avoid it. And he went on saying that they will claim to have out-of-body experiences. Are you familiar with out-of-body experiences?
I've read about them. Now, what is a trance medium?
It's a channeler today.
What is known today as a channeler?
Channeler, yeah.
Okay.
Shirley MacLaine's experience of getting involved with spiritism and with the supposed inhabitants of far distant planets in the galaxies. I taped the whole thing, it's 3 hours.
And you were hearing the fulfillment of what this high priest had said 45 years ago.
Yeah, exactly. So he went on explaining about the fact that the spirits will show themselves willing to give valuable guidance that will not only help people avoid the destruction of the planet, but it would cause it to enter into a higher state of existence. For instance, he said the spirits will promise, and this is a big word, promise, that if their recommendations are followed carefully, they will usher in a glorious new age of peace and prosperity, and there'll be there'll be no more wars. See, there'll be no more famines. There'll be no more people getting unhappy with one another. Neighbors will love neighbor, and social unrest will not take place no more. It'll be there'll be perfect happiness for 1,000 years. That's what the Spirit is going to promise. And
almost like the Garden of Eden created all over again.
And now we find that a lot of preachers are preaching the great age of glorious new age of victory over wars, victory over social unrest, victory over famines, and victory over all kinds of.
And he used the words New Age to describe what was coming.
It would be a glorious new age, yeah. And this is exactly what the movement is all about today. And he went on and said, as I said earlier, that as life on this planet becomes more and more difficult, and calamities will strike the planet more and more frequently, the spirits at that time are going to put all their effort to impress religious leaders, to bring before the masses of the earth the sacredness of Sunday. See? They will teach Sunday sacredness. And with the religious leaders, looking forward to 1,000 years of perfect peace on earth, they will put all their effort into it. Then laws will be passed by governments. One person asked, what's going to happen about people that don't believe in the Spirit's recommendation? The priest says that's no problem at all. Laws will be passed by governments that will force people to go along with it, regardless of whether they believe in it or not. And he says the law enforcement officers will explain to people, make it clear that such a law is necessary to assure the well-being of all people. He says the laws will be passed with no effort at all. And then he went on and he said about the fact that the venerability of the sun, which in ages past was such an irritant to the Creator. All these great nations and other nations, of smaller ones, were all involved in sun worship. And in those centuries, the Creator found that teaching of the worship of the sun to be a terrible irritant. And he said, it is going again to take place, but not in worshiping the sun, in remembering Sunday to keep it holy. He made a statement I would never forget. He says, by the observance of the day upon which the master, Satan, has placed the unction of his authority and power, see, he receives homage, regardless of whom people claim to worship. Isn't that something? So, can you understand now why I had 28 Bible studies in 1 week and started to go to church on Sabbath? And I never missed since until I became sick.
The issue of a day of worship came up in that meeting. Was Sunday the only day mentioned?
Well, you see, the priest mentioned, yes, about the fact Satan has chosen Sunday as his day. The Creator has chosen the seventh day of the week. Lucifer has chosen to call his day the first day of the week, Sunday. See? And regardless of what people claim to worship, worshiping God, the Creator, by observing that day, that particular day, they are bringing homage and respect.
Now at that time, I bet you did, because that was the one group that under question only, the high priest of the demonic worship house, the thing that he had said to you was, this is the one group that can't be deceived.
That's right.
And so somewhere back inside that that resistance you had came out, and you awoke.
A few months later, that experience, unique experience, was instrumental in helping me make a decision for Christ. And also, I had no hesitation to join myself to God's commandment-keeping people because of the fact that I knew what kind of people they were. And after having had 28 Bible studies in 1 week, I started to keep the Sabbath, forever. But you see, the time that I had these Bible studies, 4 hours per evening, we started at 7 o'clock and finished at 11 o'clock at night. We had those Bible studies similar to what you showed me the other day, that you have in your pocket. The Bible studies were about an hour. There were questions, and then you looked at the verses that they gave you in the Bible, and you had your answer. It was so fantastic. And the Spirit of God was really ministering to me the graces of redemption. Every moment of all those Bible studies was precious. Precious, precious, precious.
Roger, at that time, your major language was French. You did not speak English, and all of this happened in the French language in Montreal. How long after you became a Seventh-day Adventist, or after you learned of Seventh-day Adventists, did you read the book Great Controversy by Ellen White?
Well, I joined the church. I first had the Bible studies in October of '46. In April of '47, I was baptized into the church. In September of that year, Hilda and I got married. And the French church in Montreal gave us, as a wedding gift, the Conflict of the Ages series. And I had not read the Great Controversy up to then.
But then you read it.
Yeah.
And what went through your mind when you read the book Great Controversy, thinking back on the experience you'd had maybe just a year or so before?
That's right.
What went through your mind?
This person is inspired. This person has got knowledge that nobody else has on the face of the earth, except, the Spiritist that I was mentioning, because it's so unique. See?
Well, I find it very remarkable that they were willing to share the strategy that Satan is working on with this group. Of course, their plan was that it would never get out.
That's right.
Under seal of death.
That's right. Their plan is that you don't have to worry about saying anything about the Great Master. Because as soon as anybody strays some, the spirits will tell the high priest right away what's taking place. They did with my Bible study that Wednesday night. I studied on Monday and Tuesday. By Wednesday night, spirit counselor appeared to the high priest and says, you have one of your defectors. He says, that Morneau guy, you're going to get rid of him. Because he's out there studying the Bible with the Adventists, the people that the master hates most on the face of the earth. And the high priest almost had a heart attack. Because he said, I kind of like you. He said, that's what he told my friend. Because I didn't see him after that. But he told my friend to try to convince me to go back, to spirit worship.
Roger, you were 72 hours away from making a full commitment to the elite spirit worship. Mm-hmm. How did God rescue you at that strategic moment?
Well, I'll tell you, I should really go back a couple of weeks in time. As the high priest had talked to us about the advantage of getting initiated in the society on the 31st of October, that night I came home, went to bed, and I couldn't sleep till about 3 o'clock in the morning. Because I had all of this experience of the supernatural I'd gone through for so many months now, and my Catholic upbringing that I've had, and questions about God. Now I knew there's a God, because the Spiritist made me well aware of that. But I was in a state of terrible unrest. I could not have slept. And without even giving it a thought, somehow, I said, as I was laying on my bed, I said, if there's a God up there that cares for me, help me. That's all I said. Next thing I knew, the alarm clock rang. It was 6:30. It was time for me to get up and go to work. At that time, I had changed employment. I had taken a course in embroidery for the manufacturers of ladies' dresses in Montreal. There's embroidery companies that makes all this, the piping and the sequins work and all of this, fancy designs,
sure,
ladies' dresses. And that's where I was working at the time.
You were just 72 hours away, as Karen mentioned a moment ago. You had prayed, without even realizing what you were doing. God was about to rescue you in a very special way. Tell us about that. What happened that Monday morning?
Well, let's go back to the Friday.
Okay.
Previous to that. I was working for a Jewish firm. And the bosses, one kept the Sabbath, and the other didn't. And Harry, which was the one that didn't, as I was going out to have my cigarette at the afternoon break, he said, Roger, when you come back in, come into my office, I want to talk to you. I said, okay. I came back in, and he said, close the door. I closed the door. He said, I want you to do me a favor. Oh? What do you mean? Well, I'll tell you what. He said, you notice yesterday or a couple of days ago, there was a fellow here that I showed around the shop. And, yeah, I said, yes. Well, he's going to be starting to work here Monday. And he's not just an average guy. He's a Christian, but keeps the Bible Sabbath. I said, go over that again? He says, yes, like the Jewish people, he keeps the 7-day Sabbath. Saturday is the 7th day of the week. Well, I said, let me tell you, sir, the nuns have told us that there's been a mistake made in the calendar, that actually what shows to be Sunday is the 7th day of the week. Oh, no, he says, there wasn't no mistake made in the calendar, he says. Saturday is the 7th day of the week, like you see it on your calendar, and he says it never was changed. And Sunday is the first day of the week. Oh, I said, that's interesting. I said, I'm going to have to go to the library and check this out. Oh, you don't have to, he says. He pulled out his desk drawer open, pulls out his big dictionary, and he looks up Saturday. And it said the 7th day of the week. And he looked at it on Sunday and he said the first day of the week. Okay. Well, I said, that's pretty interesting. Now, here's what I'd like you to do for me. I'd like you to, first of all, I'm going to have this man work next to you, on the machine next to you. And don't tell him that I want to know what denomination he belongs to. You got to be very tactful. You have all the time in the world, even if it takes a month, he says. He says, I tell you what, he says, it's the craziest thing. He says that I've been thinking about this guy and I can't get him out of my mind. about this, the fact he's a Christian and keeps the 7-day Sabbath, keeps the Bible Sabbath. And he said, you know, I got more important things to think about than stuff like that. So he said, I want to find out what denomination he belongs to, and I just did. I said, why didn't you ask him? Well, he said, no, I wouldn't do that, that's too personal. Okay.
So he wanted you to ask him and find out for him.
Find out and not let him know that, you know, the boss was interested, you know. So Monday morning came, and the new fellow came in, and the boss introduced him to the people. There was about maybe 50 people working in that plant. And he said, Cyril is an accomplished embroiderer, and we'll be very happy to have him here with us, and, you know, made a little speech. Then he walked into to his new machine, and he says, Roger, meet Cyril, and I shook his hand, and we started to work. And it was not more than about 20 minutes that I was working that my machine started to skip stitches. So what happened? You have to stop and back up where you were. And I was working on sequence. In other words, the sequence come up. There's a row of thread behind it. They're all set up, and it's on a spool. And then the needles put them in there. And when it skips, you got to stop, back up, start over it from where it left off. It wasn't too long that I'd done this 2 or 3 times.
And that really made you happy, I bet.
And I was mad. And as a French person, usually they don't go easy on the saints and gods. That was using some language was not that great for Cyril. But anyway, I called the boss over. I said, come and see this machine, I'm having trouble with it. He checked it, worked on it for 5 minutes, you know, work with it. Beautiful. I sit down again, start to work, the same thing happens over again. Harry, after he tried that 2 or 3 times, he said, Joe, come over. He's the old guy that knows everything about everything, you know, in the shop. So he looks at the tensions and adjusts things, and he says, it's working beautiful. Well, I started to work again, another 20 minutes after, same thing, and I had to stop, whole thing. By then, you know, it was time to go out for the coffee break.
Cyril and Cynthia, so good to have you folks come down and visit with us for a short time today. And Cyril, I want to start off our visit by just asking you about an experience you had, I believe, almost 45 years ago.
That's right.
You had gone to work at a new embroidery shop in Montreal, Canada. Mm-hmm. And there was a guy that was at the next machine to you that first day you went there. Did you notice anything strange about him?
Yes, I did notice he had some peculiarities that, well, to say the least, they were different. First of all, when he worked at his machine, when he had a little malfunction, he knew how to, well, criticize the machine by using some language that was quite offensive to me, at least. He would curse at the machine, and in both French and English. He was quite a linguist. And when my machine would break, he noticed that I would just fix it and keep on working. There was a difference, and he noticed a difference himself. We were both behaving differently when our machines didn't function right.
Now, so that very first day, there were problems with the machines. Your machine and his machine had problems.
They both had problems.
But you had a chance at the break time to get acquainted with him. And how did he approach you?
Well, he approached me with a question, sort of. He said, I noticed that when your machine gives trouble, you don't get angry. You just fix it and keep on working. And I told him, well, it didn't make sense to get angry with the machine. It's an inanimate object. And he sort of apologized for his getting angry with his machine. And we started a conversation there, and it gave me the opportunity to sort of introduce him to some of the things I had experienced just a few days before.
And what were the things that you had just experienced a few days before?
I was getting some Bible studies from a minister named Elder Warren Taylor. And although I wasn't an Adventist, I was quite moved by those Bible studies because of the fact that as he gave the Bible studies, he kept it quite simple. And he would prove everything he would say, even if it's from the Bible, he would prove it. And in some cases, he proved it from worldly books such as the Encyclopedia Britannica. And he gave good evidence of everything that he was saying was true.
So I started walking out, and I told Sarah, I said, have you ever seen such a crazy thing as this, the trouble I have with this machine? No, he said, it's a new machine. I said, brand new machine, just a month old. He said, that's very unusual. So we go downstairs, and I said, do you have any suggestions? How to fix this problem? No, not really, but he says, I have a suggestion that might help. He says, I heard you, he says, calling upon God, but it was not in the way that I would have liked to hear you talk. He says, go easy on God, he says.
Did that offend you, Roger?
You know, I said, thank you. You did not offend me, because he was pleasant about it. And I said, you know, I said, thank you. I said, I'm sorry if I offended you by my language. He says, it didn't bother me. I said, by the way, I said, this is the opening. You're quite a religious man, I understand. Yeah, he said, I read the Bible and go to church. That's great. I said, what denomination do you belong to? Well, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. Excuse me? Repeat that again? He says, yeah, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist.
Did that shock you?
Well, the word Adventist shocked me. The Adventist, you see, I had heard so much about the Adventist, but Seventh-day Adventist, I had never heard the name before.
Cyril, did you and Cynthia know at this time when you were studying with Roger that he was involved at all with spirit worship?
You know, the Lord blessed us mightily. He blessed us with the fact that we were completely ignorant of anything. And I would not advise anybody to openly go and do something like we did with having the knowledge that this person is a devil worshiper, because no person has the power to overcome this on their own. But I feel very impressed that the Lord, the Holy Spirit, guided us, and our eyes were covered until a certain time that we could handle it.
And when was that time, Cyril? When did you discover that this man worshipped demon spirits?
We discovered that midway between the lessons, and I don't know exactly what point it was, but one night he came, and we had previously studied on the unpardonable sin. And he came with tears in his eyes, and he was very upset. And he said, he was upset, and he had books on his arm. And I said, well, what are you so upset about, Roger? Roger in French. And he said, well, you don't know what I've been doing. So I said, look, the Bible says all manner of sins will be forgiven. And he said, but you don't know what I've done. So after he told me what he had been doing, worshiping the devil and getting acquainted with devil worship and going very deep into it, he showed me some books, and when I opened one of the books and read some instructions on how to worship the devil, I closed it up. I said, I don't want to see this. And I said, but one thing I want to make clear. I said, if you had committed the unpardonable sin, you would not be here willing to study the Bible. And therefore, the scripture that says all manner of sins will be forgiven applies to you. I said, you must consider yourself forgiven, and you must forgive yourself. And we went on from there.
I didn't even know what a devil worshiper was. I think we were both very naive. And so I went along, and I said, well, I tell you what, we'll leave the fact whether the sin is pardonable or unpardonable to God, and let's finish the Bible studies. That was all of the information, knowledge that I had. And it wasn't until later, and then he began telling us, you know, a little bit about the troubles he was having, and I thought that was rather unusual, and we're being involved.
Now, Cyril, whenever you did learn, you and Cynthia, about this spiritism business, you immediately had a question about whether or not it was real. You were really naive about that. Now, tell us, you had some special dispensation, some special work with the police department there in Canada, and you had the ability to carry a gun. Is that right?
Yes, I had a permit to carry a gun. And when he told me that not only was he having these manifestations, he was also having, he heard footsteps walking down his hall. He lived at the end of a long hall, and his door was the only door down that hall. And the footsteps would stop at his door. Then a rap would come to the door. And we were also having trouble with the union at that time. So when he told me about these wrappings on the door, I said, "Oh, that's only those union people trying to come and get you."
Yeah.
So I said, "I'll scare them away just the same as I scared them away when they came to get me." And so I had so much faith in the gun that, don't forget, I wasn't baptized at this time.
That's right.
I had faith in this gun. So I took my gun and we went to Roche's place, and we were laughing and talking and just having a jolly time. And at midnight, we heard the footsteps coming down the hall. I said, "Roger, put your hand on the doorknob and get ready to pull it open." And so with all the bravado that I could muster with a gun, I waited for the rap on the door, and there it came. And I don't know exactly how many times the rap came.
Well, first you opened the door, and there was nobody there.
Right.
And you said, now his color changed. The color of his face changed.
The color of his face changed?
Yeah,
Believe it or not.
Okay.
He was expecting Union people.
There wasn't anybody there.
There was nobody there.
What was your emotion at that moment, sir? What did you when that door came open?
And there was nothing there.
Well, his emotion, excuse me for jumping in here,
Okay.
was that he was almost like, a statue of salt.
That was your observation,
Yeah.
Roger.
That's right. So I said, "Hey, let's sit down, man." I said, they're not going to harm us. So we sat down, Cyril, and we talked some more. There was no problem. And about 10 minutes later, the spirit knocked on my balcony door. And the glass was loose a little bit in there, and it rattled pretty bad.
And did he still have all the bravado?
By then, he jumped right out of his seat. Didn't you, Cyril? And he said, "Let's get out of here." Because he had knocked real hard. Yeah.
It was at that time I said, "Roger, I think it's time for me to get rid of the gun and get baptized."
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That made him make his baptized.
Well, I've heard of lots of ways the decisions are made, but that's probably one of the most unique I've heard, Cyril.
Dramatic to say the least.
Yes.
We were like children dealing with something we had no knowledge about, and he protected us. And like I said, if anyone knows of someone who is involved in this, they can't do it alone.
Requires special prayer and protection.
It requires the Lord to be the one to handle the situation. A man cannot handle the situation because the powers and principles that's involved in this, no man can withstand.
What gave you the sense that you now had an opportunity for salvation? What was it that told you had a chance?
Well, the Holy Spirit was inspiring me. The Holy Spirit was ministering to me the grace of redemption. And to be able to put it into words, I don't have this kind of a vocabulary because it's a mystery type thing. The Holy Spirit recreates you as He ministers to you, you see? And cleans your mind and gives you understanding, and you see things in a different light that you never thought about before. Life becomes a meaningful thing all of a sudden, and you'll be willing to die for it, you see, for what you've learned. Because that's what I said to myself. The second night when I went back home, I had about an hour in the streetcar to my place. I got home at 12 o'clock. I said, "Hey, if they do me in tonight, I have the beautiful experience of having learned these great, wonderful things about God." Beautiful things. So on Wednesday night, there I had the first hope. I can't remember exactly what verse of scripture was, but this one here says, "He came unto his own, and his own received him not. But as many as received him, to them gave he power to become the sons of God." You see, and since you had explained what it meant.
And you took that right into your heart.
Yeah.
Roger, during these 3 days, from Monday night, Tuesday night to Wednesday night, what went through your mind regarding the spirits?
I knew that I was going to be worked over by the spirits, either through one of their boys or some accident or something, see. This is the way I felt, I mean. And I said, this is very unusual, that nothing has happened yet. And I'm going home on Wednesday night again with another appointment for Thursday Bible study at 7 o'clock.
Now, let me make sure I understand. You had missed Wednesday night Spirit Praise
oh,
service,
yes.
at which time you were supposed to have made your full commitment.
Yeah, I would have.
And you had been at a Bible
answer.
study instead.
That is correct. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what happened next?
So I said, this will be the end of it. Wednesday night I said, they'll have a praise section to the gods, and that'll be it. But nothing happens Wednesday night. Thursday morning I was alive. And I went back for another Bible study. And that is 4 more. And by then I realized that the Creator was taking care of things. Because these people never give God the glory. But they always refer to higher powers. They respect, they pride themselves on the fact that they respect authority. You see? So therefore, they recognize the Creator for who He is. And but of course, that the Master, fallen Lucifer, is just as smart as God is. And he's got it worked out, so he's going to have a kingdom to himself for eternity, and you don't have to worry about things. So I realized that the power of God was intervening. Now I became brave, see? And the Spirit of God gave me the strength to do that. Because I said that God gave me the strength to be able to die for these things that I just learned, you see? And that's what happened. I got those Bible studies.
So you went ahead and went to Bible studies on Friday night?
Yeah.
And then you kept your first Sabbath, didn't
yeah.
you? Tell us about your experience on Sabbath.
First, that evening, before I left, 11 o'clock, Cheryl says, you enjoy the Bible studies? Oh yeah, very, very much so. I said, tomorrow you people are going to church? He says, yeah. I said, interesting. He said, would you like to come with us? I said, yeah. Because I had the Bible study on the Sabbath already. I said, sure. I'm still alive. And he said, what do you mean by you're still alive? Well, I said, I say, if I'm still alive, I'll be here, I'll do this or do that. But I knew what I'd said. I'm still alive. And he said, would you join us here and we'll walk to church? It's not that far. We'll walk a few blocks and be a nice day tomorrow. I said, yeah, sure, I'll meet you here. And we walked to church, and we were welcome at the door, and there was a rack of brochures on the walls. I walked over and looked at some of them, picked up a couple, put in my pocket, and we were from Sabbath school, and I thought it was great.
Roger, the Lord helped you get through the Sabbath day without smoking. How did you eventually deal with your smoking habit?
Well, I tell you, Pastor Taylor talked, for quite a while. When it got to be about 7:15 in the evening, I was getting very distressed because I got a tremendous urge of smoking about an hour before. And I said, oh, I gotta have a cigarette. I just can't stand it anymore. And as the pastor continued explaining what I had to ask him to explain, it was difficult for me. And as he left, I told Cyril and said, yes, I'm sorry, but I got to smoke. And on the way home in the streetcar, I said to myself, this is going to be, she was expression, but a hell on earth to give up smoking. Then I said, no, it's not going to be, because I'm going to have help. I got to my apartment and I opened a clothes closet and I had 2 cartons of cigarettes on the shelf. And I opened them up and threw all the cigarettes, all the packs were opened up, threw into the toilet and flushed it down the drain. And then I knelt by the little table I had there with my Bible on it. And I had already had started to read that Crucifixion of Christ, which I have read for 45 years now, every morning. Matthew the 27th chapter, verses 24 through 54. Every day, God willing, I always read it. Well, now I can have my devotions at night, and I don't have to put the light on because I know it by heart, see? Mm-hmm. But there I placed my trust and my life in the care of the Lord of Glory, who had precious blood on Calvary, to acquire the legal right to be able to redeem me from where I was and from where I was going. So that was the end of smoking. Never had a desire to smoke again. I told him to take the desire away to recreate me. I realized that he was a creator he can recreate.
Roger, as you came closer to making a full commitment to God, did the demons try to prevent you from making that commitment in any way?
Well, I didn't have to wait too long. During the week, the Spirit of God held back the demon spirits so that they could not have access to me. I realized that from Wednesday night on. Then, as I came home at midnight of that Saturday night, there was a note on my door from my buddy. And he said, "It is urgent that I talk to you tonight. I don't care if you call me in the middle of the night." But he says, "I gotta talk to you. We're having a terrible disaster. Facing a terrible disaster." So I said, "Well, Roland, one must have gotten some real static, Sure enough. First of all, I wanted to review something that we'd studied that night. So I had a book. They lent me a book, St. John's Herald, and I opened the book up and I started to read. And there was a marker, a sheet of paper actually, it had been cut in half in there. And I had put it on the table. And the piece of paper started to levitate and move around the room. See? So it didn't bother me. I knew what was doing it. And then the sheet of paper came and stood about a foot above my book. Then it was slapped down on the book, and the book fell on my lap, and almost into the floor. I picked it up. See? And I felt like telling the spirits, buzz off. But I had understood that I would not again talk with spirits. I had made up my mind on that. So I picked up the book again, started to write, and then the spirit picked up the book and threw it across the room against the wall with tremendous force. So I decided, well, I'm going to go and phone my buddy, see what he's going to do. Then there was a public phone in the hallway. I didn't want to use it. I went down to a diner or restaurant or just down the block, and I called him up. "How's things rolling?" He says, "Man," he says, "don't you care for my life, Morneau? What kind of a friend are you? I've been suffering," he says, "since Wednesday." He says, "trying to get a hold of you." And he says, "I've been waiting at your door. What time did you come home?" I said, "Come home at midnight." He said, "You're in real trouble. Because the high priest, as a spirit, appeared to him on Wednesday evening and told him that you were studying the Bible with some Christians. But you were not just studying the Bible with Christians. You were studying the Bible with Seventh-day Adventists, the people that the Master hates most on the face of the planet. How in the world did you get yourself involved in something like that? Don't you care for your life?" I said, "Sure." Beside that, he says, and he told me other things that the spirits had told, the high priest. So the conversation went on the phone for a while, and I said, "Now listen, it's not possible for me to explain to you over the phone what has taken place in my studying the Bible 4 hours per evening, through the week. Why don't you come to see me tomorrow sometime, and I'll give you the real reasons why I did what I did." He said, "Okay." So we made an appointment for sometime Sunday morning. And I went back, after my phone call, I went back to my apartment. And then I decided I might as well get to bed. It's light. I get to bed. I was not sooner in bed that the lights went on. I got up, went to the lights off. Get back to bed, the light goes on again. I said to myself, there's no use getting up, turning the lights off. They're going to put them back on again. So I'm going to decide to go to sleep with the lights on. So after a while, things start moving around the place. a picture on that wall. Goes and sticks itself on the wall. There's no nothing to hold it up. And the light that was on the table moved and stayed in midair. It stays there. See?
Were you feeling afraid at this time?
Oh, no, not at all. No.
No,
No, because of the fact that, you see, human beings get accustomed to a lot of things. And you get supernatural strength, either from good or evil. Mm-hmm. And the Lord was singing me through this thing. And I knew that I was going to have a terrible struggle somewhere along the way, somehow. And he was going to try to destroy me, no question about it. So, after this nonsense had gone quite a while, I went on to sleep. Hey, I'm going to get my rest. I'm tired. I said, Lord, bless the old guy. I was not old in those days, though, but I said, bless the fellows. I can get some rest from these spirits. And I went to sleep. And it woke me up about 2 o'clock in the morning again. And at 4 o'clock. Now, at 4 o'clock in the morning there, I sat up in bed, pushed my pillow in the back, and I said to myself, what in the world am I going to do? Because the Lord doesn't clear them out from me. Then I got a thought that maybe the Lord just wants me to know from the spirits exactly how things are, how I'm standing with them. And I said to the spirit, you want to talk to me? The spirit said, yes, finally, and we will talk to you. What in the world do you think you're doing? You see, the Lord had held back even on the spirits, that the spirits could not talk to me. I realized that they were under a very special control. So I got talked with the spirit. And I realized that he was a spirit counselor. Because he said, the master has tremendous plans for your life. Fame, honor, respect, wealth. Don't you value any of these things? I said, I want you to know, Spirit, that 10 days ago, I would have grabbed your offer. But now you're talking to a former spirit worshiper, and I'm educated to the reality of life, especially of the reality of eternal life. And I said, I'm not interested. For about maybe 2 or 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes, and it's a long time. In the conversation, there was no response to what I had said.
It was like he was totally amazed by your courage.
Yeah. Then when the Spirit spoke again, he had a tremor in his voice. In other words, when a person gets really desperate in a crisis situation, your voice changes. And it gave me the impression that he had a hard time expressing himself. And that was a very clever individual. Well, he said, we've worked for so long, over the years, to prepare you for the Master's work. And what are you doing? And things like that. And he told me, okay, you're turning down the offer of the Master. I said, definitely. He said, from now on, he says, poverty will be a lot of your life. That is, he says, if you can manage to stay alive. And he says, that I doubt that you won't going to have much of. He says, your days are numbered. I said, Spirit, the high priest has mentioned about higher powers. Am I affiliated now with the higher powers? And I said, I don't have to concern myself with you or your master or any of the other spirits, because you're all losers. I am the winner. 100 million years of perfect life, recreated, translated, or resurrected body that I'll have. My years will be counted into the millions of years. If I take the offer of the Master, what do I have? I'm 20 years of age. And even if I live to be 100, how can you compare that to 100 million years? And I'll have all the gold that I want and the silver that you're offering me, and more. So I'm not a loser no more. I'm a winner. And the Spirit says, will destroy you. And he laughed. He had this was frightening. For one time, he had this laugh that caused me to think immediately of the laugh that Nero, instantly, Nero must have had on his face when the lions were tearing the Christians apart. That's the thing. I said, this is the way that Nero must have laughed when the lions were tearing Christians apart, in the arena of the Colosseum in Rome. Yeah.
So how did the spirit finally leave, Roger?
To finally leave, almost took the door away with him. He left through the balcony door, and the door was slammed open. Yeah, open. And the doorknob almost went through the plaster on the wall.
Did he leave on his own accord?
I commanded him to. I commanded him in the name of the Lord Jesus to leave my place to come no more.
And he left?
And he left. And instead of slamming the door shut behind him, like a person would, he slammed the door open as he went out, and it slammed into the wall. And the doorknob, Cyril may still remember, you could see the imprint of the doorknob in the plaster. The house was maybe 50 years old, so the plaster had been settled a long time.
You commanded the demon to leave by the blood of Jesus Christ.
Yep.
He left, slammed the door. Did you go back to sleep?
Yeah.
And then the next morning, your friend Roland came over.
Well, between that, I'd like to tell you a little bit
Okay.
more. I woke up in the morning, of course, and I said, time to get up. And my Bible, my night table was to my left. As I was laying in bed, I put my hand on the Bible, and then I started to shuffle, the pages like this. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about many things, and I was doing this. And all of a sudden, I opened the Bible, wide open. And then I got thinking about it again, never realizing what I'd done. I got up, and after I straightened myself out a little bit, I looked at the Bible, and my eyes fell on this Isaiah chapter of Isaiah, the prophet, and I got to reading, and it was the experience of Hezekiah when Sennacherib, the great general of the armies of the Assyrians, had compassed about the city of Jerusalem, and he was telling Hezekiah that he might as well give up, open the gates, you're not going to survive this because we've destroyed all the nations that we've gone through before getting here. And I was very impressed. The fact that Hezekiah took the letter that the general had sent him, and he went in the temple of the Lord and placed it before the Lord, and he talked to the Lord about the letter. You see? And asked for his protecting care and guidance. And when he had not yet returned to his castle, when Isaiah came, the prophet, and he says, the Lord has got a message for you. The way that Sennacherib has come, that's the way that he's going to return. And I love that prayer, that Hezekiah prayer. I memorized that. It was a beautiful prayer. Because I got it, from that moment on, I got an inner desire to fortify myself with the Word of God. Because every time that I read the verse in the Bible that applied to my condition, I received encouragement and strength. And I said, this is what I need to do. I'm going to fortify myself with the Word of God. I'm going to memorize the Word of God. I write there, and then I took a piece of paper. I underlined those verses of the prayer of Hezekiah in red in the Bible. I wrote down on a piece of paper, put it in my pocket, my coat pocket. So when I traveled on the tramway, you see, I could memorize that. And I've done that now for 45 years, and I'm still memorizing things, Because Hilda says to me once, she said, are you still memorizing? I said, yeah. Why are you memorizing? You know so much of the Bible and everything. I said, well, I need some more. You gotta keep feeding yourself spiritually. And that was the blessing that it was. I saw there a beautiful deliverance. And then I read the rest of the chapter, and it shows that during the night, the angel of the Lord went out. So when the general and his officers woke up in the morning, they looked over the camp, and all their soldiers were dead. And they took off for Nineveh before they were done in. And he went to the temple of Nisroch, his god, and Sennacherib, and while he was worshiping there, his sons came in and put a dagger in his back. and they fled to the land of the Arameans. I was very impressed with that. And I left the Bible open there. I had my worship. When my friend came over, the Bible was still there. So,
whenever your friend Roland came over, you had just finished your worship time and you had read this story about Sennacherib. What did he say? Did he feel agitated? Was he upset?
Oh yeah. He came in and sat himself down and he said, I can't believe it. Not, of all people, he says, not Morneau would do a stupid thing like daring the spirits. You know? He said, you're an intelligent man, Roger. You know, you got a choice. The high priest tells me that if you come to see him with me now, no problem. Everything is going to be straightened out of the spirits. He promised him that already. He got that assurance. And he said, let's do the right thing. Why gamble with your life? I said, well, I'll tell you what. I don't feel like going to see the high priest. Now or ever. And we conversed about a number of things, and he said, well, I hate to have to tell you this, but seeing that you decided that you're not going to have anything to do anymore with the master and his people, I hate to tell you this, that the high priest told me that a price has been put on your life. A medical doctor, remember, he gave me the name, has pledged $10,000 to have you done in.
How did you feel whenever you found out that you had a contract out on your life?
Well, it surprised me a little, but I had prepared myself for something worse. So that it didn't bother me too much. Because see, the strength of the Lord, the word of the Lord was, the Spirit of God was giving me strength.
Okay, was the presence of the Spirit of God evident to Roland there that Sunday morning?
As we talked, and now he decided that he was losing the battle. He became very nervous. And he got up and went to the door, put his head on the door, and we talked there. He says, Morneau, please, if it's not for your sake, do it for me. Do you realize what's going to happen to me if something happens to you? I don't know how to go to treatment. I said, hey man, let me tell you something. I got a suggestion for you. You come with me. I'll guarantee you all the protection that you need to live to ripe old age. And beside that, I'll tell you what. You should go back and tell the high priest and all his boys to come to our church. I'll arrange with my minister to have 100 spaces there, right off the center aisle. I felt like I'm making them an invitation. Well, he says, I would never say a stupid thing like that. He says, well, that's your responsibility. I said, no, things are settled. He lit a cigarette, and as he lit the cigarette, I saw his hand shake like this. And I said, you're quite nervous. Well, let me tell you, he says, there's a power here, a presence that I'm not accustomed to. I'm very uncomfortable because there's a power here that makes me terribly uncomfortable. Well, I said, you know what it is? The presence of the Spirit of God, the Spirit of the Creator, the life giver. And I said, every other power is subject unto that higher power. You're aware of that? Oh yeah. So that's the way that it ended. He decided to go.
He told you that you had a contract put out in your life.
Yeah.
How did you respond to him? He was nervous, but he said to you, you're walking under the shadow of death, Morneau. How did you respond?
I said, my friend, I got some news for you. Not so much for you as it is for the high priest. And now the Spirit of God gave me very special righteous indignation. Have you ever heard of that terminology? That when I heard that they were going to do me in with, have me shot, I said, look, I got some news for the high priest and his boys. The day that they wipe me out and do me in will be the day that the life giver is going to pull the bread of life on all of them except the high priest. And there'll be dead cadavers there in the temple. And tell the high priest this: don't call funeral directors because they don't have enough, ambulance, but what do you call
Coffins?
it? No, the wagon.
Oh, hearses.
Hearses. I said, you better call the fire department of Montreal. Then you pile them all up there, the whole 100 of them. I said, this is what's going to take place. He said, you're a fool. I said, you think so? Let me show you something. Picked up the Bible, and I said, I'm going to tell you a little story. Make it short. He said, short because he says, I'm going. I said, listen to this. I just read this morning. There's a man by the name of Hezekiah that believed in the Creator a few hundred years back. And let me tell you what happened to him. Sennacherib came with his armies, told him the story. He went before the Lord and prayed about it. And the Lord says the way that Sennacherib came, that's the way he's going to go home. And during the night, 185,000 men were destroyed by the angel of the Lord. So I said, don't tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about. I said, I can assure you that if they put a bullet in me, they're all going to lose out. Because the Creator will remove the breath of life. And I felt as sure of that as if it was a prediction that I think the Lord would have backed up my word.
So how did he respond after you told him that story?
Well, he said, I guess he says that I've lost my time. Before we part, he says, I don't want to even shake your hand because you're not a friend of mine no more. I said, have it your way. If ever we meet one another anywhere in the city of Montreal, don't you ever look at me like you know me, because I'll ignore you and embarrass you, he says, wherever we are. He said, fine. No problem with that at all.
Now, Roger shared with you that his former associates that worship demons, that were part of that elite spirit worship group in Montreal, were very unhappy with him, as were the demonic powers, for studying, especially with Seventh-day Adventists.
That's right.
Did he ever share with you or tell you that there might be some danger involved for you?
He did tell us something that rather startled me. He said he got a call from somebody in that organization, and they threatened our lives, and they knew us by name. And of course, nobody followed him. And I had to assume that the powers of darkness were able to communicate to those people that worshipped what our names were. They knew our names. And the things, some of the events that followed were such that I attributed them to demon powers.
Cynthia, there was an event that was a little startling to you and to Cyril, and I know Roger was interested in it as well. You had a fire at your house shortly after the Bible studies were going on. Tell us a little bit about that.
Shortly after the Bible studies, we were living with my father at the time. So we had a very large front room, pretty large front room. And we were sitting in the room, and my brother came up, who had a little problems of his own. And they were using some cleaning fluid to get something off of a piece of clothing. And my brother suggested that it wouldn't burn, and that he wanted to try it out to see if it would or wouldn't burn. And since it was a very large room, I guess he felt that the fumes wouldn't be as concentrated as probably in a smaller room. So he just decided to light a match. And I guess the fumes didn't sink to the ground, but they had risen up to where we were sitting, and the fumes burst in the room at our waist, about our waist as we sat down.
They burst into flames?
Into flames. It burst into flames. the floor was never burned at all. It was just as 3 feet off the ground, I guess. And everybody disappeared. And Cyril, he went downstairs to get a blanket. And my brother, he disappeared. I was in further into the room near the window, which was on the front side of the house. And I said, well, it isn't going to stop, so I better do something. So I jumped up on the chair, which turned out to be a stuffed chair, so I wasn't helping myself by any means. Then I looked at the window, which was about 3 feet from me, and I said, well, if I was already on the 3rd floor, and I said, well, I'll jump from the from the window onto the balcony, which was on the 2nd floor. It was a very small balcony. So I looked at the window, and the curtains had started going up in flames. And I said, you know, I just might miss that balcony and hit the cement. So I said, no, that's not going to work. So I stayed there, and then I just became paralyzed. And the only thing that was working was my mind. And I asked the Lord, I said, Lord, I don't want to die. I just married a year, and my whole life is in front of me, and if you can see any way I can get out of here, please do something. And I waited, and I didn't get any answer. And pretty soon, as if somebody had hit me to knock me off the chair, the force of it, somebody said, jump now, which meant no questions or any other kind of rationalizations I was giving it. And I bent down to start a sort of a broad jump. And at that side of the room, I was at least 8 feet from the door. And I got down, and between me and the door was a radio, a floor-length radio with a lamp on it. And when I got down, when I crouched down to make the broad jump, I was outside of the room before Cyril came upstairs with the blanket. I don't remember how I got there.
You were just kind of moved.
It just moved.
And then what happened where you had just been?
The can of gasoline apparently was sitting.
It wasn't gasoline, it was naphtha.
Naphtha was right by the chair, and it blew right up, a big hole into the ceiling, just as I moved away. And my hair was burnt, all my face was burnt, and, well, not all, right around here. And my eyebrows were gone. And he asked me, he said, how did you get out of the room? Because by this time the room was totally in flames. And I said, I don't know. I said, but I prayed. And I was there. He didn't need the blanket then.
The Lord answers our prayers in spite of what the devil may try to do to us, doesn't he?
After the fire, and we moved away, and we were getting ready to come to the United States, we, of all places, moved in with an Irish family.
In a French neighborhood.
In a French neighborhood. Partying, they loved to party. But we stayed to ourselves pretty much because we felt that we would soon be leaving the country anyway. And they turned out to be really nice people. But while we were there, we had several different things happen. Like, for instance, we would say our prayers and get in bed, and then the doors would start slamming and the windows would go up and the wind would come through the room. And it terrified us. And so we went to bed every day, every night, with our Bible under our pillow. We'd turn on the light and everything would be calm, like, you know, as you expect. And then this would happen it happened for a couple of weeks. And then another thing started. Dishes would act like they were falling out of the closets. And somebody was sweeping with a broom on a hardwood floor. And all kinds of different things. And I was terrified. I wouldn't stay in there, you know, at all.
Did this happen? Excuse me, did this happen during the Bible studies while you were giving
this is afterwards.
Right after this?
We had a lot of things happen to us afterwards.
For a couple of months.
So you were harassed by the demonic spirits.
That's right.
For your role in bringing Roger to a knowledge of biblical truth for several months. Now,
several months.
how did it stop?
the powers of darkness don't really stop. The only way you can keep them in check is on your knees, prayer. I don't think anybody is immune to the problems that come about as a result of the devil's work. The devil is working against us full time. He knows his time is short, and there's no way of saying that, oh, he stopped. Because when you say he stopped, that's the time he's going to start. We still have problems today that we know that the devil is behind them. Many of the mistakes that we make, or that we think we make, we've been set up in most cases. And that's why the Lord wants us to pray without ceasing.
Has there ever been a time whenever you were experiencing a difficulty that you felt was the direct result of the demonic forces being angry with you, that you wished that you had never met Roger?
Never.
No.
Never. I'd do it all over again. If the same situation occurred, I'd be willing to do it all over again. Life is not as important as eternity. And a soul is not, cannot be turned away because of your own fear or your own lack of courage. There will never be a time when I'd be sorry.
After the demon left you that Saturday night, did you have any more demon harassment over the next few months, or was it just over instantly?
No, it was not over instantly. Every night, the spirits knocked on the walls, knocked on the doors. I was awakened 2 or 3 times a night. But they were trying to reopen conversation with me. The Lord would not allow them to bother me in any ways, except that they tried to have communication with me. And that, it seems that the Lord, the Creator has given us freedom of choice. You can choose good or choose evil. You see, that's your prerogative. It's a freedom that He has given us, which is beautiful, freedom of choice. Well, of course, the enemy of the Lord says, hey, I want access to it. At least you can allow me to knock on the door. He responds, you lost him. He's mine. So I knew that very well. And it went for 6 months that the spirits knocked every night.
Did you wonder why they were continuing to do that?
Oh, yeah. I said, hey, thank you, Lord, it's all you allowed them to do. You know, they would love to destroy me, bring the ceiling down and the whole building on me, for that matter. But I said, I figured to myself, this is the thorn in the flesh. See, I had read 2 Corinthians, the Apostle Paul says, because of the abundance of the revelations that he had received from God and all that, he says, there is given to me a thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I should be exalted above measure. You know, because the fallen human heart just loves to think good of itself and becomes proud and vain and sin against its creator. And the Apostle Paul says, I'm going to pray about it. He said, for this thing I besought the Lord thrice. 3 times he prayed about it. And the Lord told him, my grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Isn't that beautiful? So the apostle said, therefore, most gladly will I rejoice in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. And I said the same thing to the Lord. Lord, if you want these critters to, you know, be after me all the days of my life and knock and wake me up every night, that's okay with me. That's the least I could put up with, you know.
So when did it stop?
Well, one prayer meeting, the minister says, how's things going? He says, with your Christian walk. I said, sir, couldn't go any better. He says, I'm glad for you. This was after the prayer meeting, we're just leaving. And he said, no problem with the spirits at all, huh? Oh, the spirits, well, yeah, they're trying to open communication with me all the time. You knock every night, they wake me up. You do? How can you put up with that? All right, there's no other way. Oh, no, he says, wait a minute now. He says, it's my fault I didn't tell you this. He says, the spirits have an open avenue to you that God cannot close, as long as you have in your place the literature that you, or some of the things that you had to do with spirit worship. Do you have anything like that in your place? Oh yeah, I got 3 books. Then I got some incense. And I got some candles. Well, he said, get rid of all this mess, and you're not going to be bothered with the spirits anymore. I'm sure of that. But I did exactly what he told me. Stopped completely. And the Lord has been gracious to me over the years. I've been in some situations on the road with trucks and storms and snow and sleet and things. I was traveling so much. I was traveling anywhere between 25 to 35,000 miles a year. And that's a lot of miles to put on the road all the time. And I've seen so many instances where I could have been killed. I mean, well, as a matter of fact, in my book on prayer, I talk about 2 or 3 incidents there.
Well, it occurs to me that there's an old rule that says if you play with fire, you're going to get burned.
Yep.
And fortunately for you, 45 years ago, you were rescued, kind of a brand from the burning.
That's right.
Roger, and your testimony lives on.
Yeah.
You've walked into the shadow of death for 45 years, according to the priest, but if I read correctly in your book, you said you wouldn't mind that as long as the Creator walked with you. And He has,
yeah.
hasn't He?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
You've been watching the conclusion to A Trip into the Supernatural.